My name is Shahbaz Taseer, and I am the son of the former Governor of Punjab, Insaniyat Salman Taseer. Um, I always feel it's important before I tell people about my own journey to tell them a little bit about my parents and who they were, because I think without them, without their genetics and maybe some of the lessons that they taught me through their own stories or stories that they lived through, is what helped me and helped me with my own journey. So my father, Salman Taseer, Shahid Salman Taseer, was the governor of Punjab, and on the 4th of Jan in 2011, he was murdered by his own bodyguard for appealing to the president of Pakistan for mercy. Mercy for a woman who was later, by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, proven innocent against false charges of blasphemy. My father believed, it was his conviction, that all laws should be there to uplift every member of society, and that no country and no society can ever succeed unless the people holding its foundation, the men and women holding its foundations, are willing to give their lives for the weak and the oppressed. My father lived by that, and he died by that. And a few months after my father's murder, I was on my way to work on Alam Road in Gulberg, and I was attacked by masked men who were from a terrorist militant group called the IMU, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. Security and intelligence agencies all around the world will tell you that these are the most violent extremists that are out there. And they best describe themselves when they have this saying that where the anger of a Pathan ends is where the mercy of an Uzbek starts. And they really are what they say they are. They are violent, cruel animals. I spent nearly 1,600 days in captivity. Half of that time in solitary confinement being tortured, and the other half running what I felt was the entire world's war machinery aimed directly at me. But before I tell you about that, I want to tell you a little bit about my mother as well. My mother's name is Amna Taseer, and of all the wonderful, dignified, resilient, graceful people that I've met in my life, she tops my list. And she taught me something very important, which was to hope, because when you hope, you can dream. And when you dream, you have to have a little bit of patience that canvas, that empty canvas, one day will become a beautiful painting that is your story. And I learned that from my mother. My father was a fighter his whole life. He was born with nothing. He was an orphan. His father had died when he was very young, so he had to make his own way in life from a very young age. And for my mother, the first time that she had to be hopeful and the first time that she had to be patient was because my father decided to give up business and come to Pakistan to fight the dictator Zia-ul Haq. And for a young woman, that seems a little crazy, but she had to be hopeful and she had to be patient for her husband, who had taken, a shot in the dark, as we used to say to him. And he left everything and came here with one mission, that the weak cannot be oppressed by laws of men. That's just not something that I can stand for. And he spent the next 10 years of his life in and out of solitary confinement. He was abducted, he was arrested, he had court cases calling him an arsonist, he was on death row. He wrote my mother a small note which said that I am not made from a wood that burns easily. He hadn't spoken to her in 6 months, and it was the first time he smuggled something across to her. And it gave her a lot of hope, and it gave her a lot of faith. And it was important because that was for him. There were times in his journey where he lost faith and he lost hope and he lost patience because of the cruelty of his situation. But I still remember when he became governor, there was a moment him and I were standing on the side, and my mother was standing with her family and friends, and he looked over to me and he said, I would never have been anywhere if I didn't have her. And he was talking about that hope and patience that she had had throughout his journey to where he ended up. And the second time in her life that I feel tragically she had to be hopeful and patient was when my father was murdered. When Abba was killed, all of our security agencies in Pakistan, intelligence agencies here, even foreign dignitaries, they said that it is almost ridiculous for you to live in Pakistan. You must leave. And I remember when the US Consul General had offered us asylum, my mother smiled and said, "No, thank you." And she said that I would like to be, regardless of the circumstances, I would like to be buried next to my husband. And then she looked over to my brother and me and she said that, "And I hope that my boys will be with me." And I think she never quite understood how hopeful she had to be and how patient she would have to be for that to actually materialize. And of course, the third time was my abduction and my kidnapping. As I mentioned, I spent almost 1,600 days with with people that did not resemble human beings. The closest I can describe them is as animals. And I prefer to, because it chips away at my humanity, thinking that there are people like this in the world. My kidnapper told me one day that, "I'm going to make you call your mother." It had been about 6-7 months. And he said, "If she doesn't pay the ransom tomorrow, I'm going to put a bullet in your head." And he said this the night before the talk. And there's not a lot that someone in my situation can do to get this ridiculous ransom that was demanded of my mother, or have 30 militants released. So it was pretty much the end as far as I was concerned. And I spent that night praying for strength, because I didn't want to die as a disappointment to my mother, because whatever it was, I was my father's son. And the last thing that she deserved, in my opinion, was somebody begging for his life. And so when I spoke to her, I said the same words that my father had said to her. I said that, "Mama, I'm not made from a wood that burns easily. And I don't want you to watch the videos that they send you. I want you to just know that I'm okay and I'm with my father." And that sounds quite brave and cool. It's in my book as well. But my mother did not find that in any way, it just didn't resonate with her, because she turned around very sternly and she said to me, "Nothing will happen to you. You will come home. Do not give up. I have left you in God's hands." And when someone has a gun to their head and somebody else, there's a massive demand of cash and militants, and they say, "We've left you in God's hands," that should be pretty hopeless. But I had started my own journey through my own loneliness and my own pain of discovering my faith. And so when she said that to me, it burnt like a little fire inside me, because it wasn't hopeless. In the place that I was at, these were the best hands that she could have left me in. Hands where I could dream, where I could hope, and I could believe that one day maybe this will be over. And that journey is not easy. And as I was telling you, I was tortured extensively, and there are a lot of young people here, so I don't want to get into the details. But one particular period of my torture, where I feel that my faith became the foundation of my survival, that there's this mindset that a human being goes through sometimes when you're studying for exams, or you face any kind of difficult situation where you're like, I'm going to do this. I can do this. If I just apply myself, I can do this. And so I was in a place, I was being tortured, I was being lashed with whips in the day. In the evenings, my back was carved open with knives and blades, and they would rub salt on my wounds, and they would tie me to a charpai. And so my days would be spent in physical pain, and my nights would be spent burning, just burning. And it's very difficult to live in so much pain. So I think through my entire journey, that was one point where I don't know if I gave up, but I had started praying to God to take my soul. just as, nicely and painless as he could. And I remember it's a very difficult prayer for a young, happy person who's given up because of his misery and his circumstance to ask God, can you spare some of your mercy and take my soul so that I don't have to go through this anymore? And I remember praying and saying Ameen, and my routine was that after I would pray, I would read the Quran, and I only had 8, 9 books, and they were missing volumes from different things, and I kind of had to put all of this together. But as I was reading the Quran, I read something that said, to be hopeless is to be away from God. And I thought to myself that here I am, a wounded, broken, destroyed human being. My body is numb with pain, and my soul cannot recognize, my very being anymore, and just wants to be at peace. That's how much pain I'm in. And I couldn't understand why you can't be hopeless. There should be certain situations where being hopeless, you can be allowed to be hopeless. And now I decided, because I'm a little stubborn, I decided that before I die, I want the answer to this question. Why can you not be hopeless, regardless of your situation? And while I was being tortured and I was, they were starving me, they were doing all kinds of stuff, but my attention wasn't there anymore. It had kind of escaped from my present and gone into this thing of where I wanted to discover, if the last thing that I find out in this world is why you can't be hopeless, I need that answer, because it's my last question. And so I came across this text. It was an explanation of the Quran written by a terrorist called Sayyid Qutb, who was one of the founding fathers of the Muslim Brotherhood and sort of Osama bin Laden's teacher. So I don't want you to take this the wrong way. In the entire book, nothing made sense to me, except one paragraph where they said where he said why he thinks one can't be hopeless. To be hopeless is to give up on God's divinity. It's to give up on the very concept that regardless of your pain or the inhumane treatment of another human being, it's just a snap for God to change your entire situation. No matter how dark and windowless, how hopeless this room is, for God, it's just an opportunity to give your soul light. And that answer resonated with me. And when I talk about my journey of facing adversity and finding resilience, the foundation of it was my faith. It was my faith, and my faith didn't just come because of something that I did. It came from stories from my parents, my father's conviction, his belief that you have one life. You can't always turn away. Sometimes it's about more than yourself. And you have to do something to help the weak and the oppressed. And my mother, whose faith told her, you must be hopeful, you must be dignified, graceful, and patient, no matter how difficult the situation in front of you is. And these were the foundations for what helped me. But I do want to tell you one last thing. Surviving adversity, resilience, surviving, it's not just about surviving. It's about thriving. For me, when I walked off that plane and I saw my family in front of me, I knew that God had performed a miracle, because only I knew how many nights there were that I had gone further away from the life that I had. And just in a single incident, I was on a plane back to Lahore to my family. So I knew how impossible that situation was, and that bridge was gapped by a miracle and nothing else. Nothing humanly possible, nothing that I'd done, nothing that no human being could do. This was divine justice, not even for me, but maybe for the sacrifice of my father giving himself to the universe. The universe answered my mother's prayers by bringing her son back. But it really is about thriving and about building your life back. When I came back, the world had changed. I had never seen a smartphone before, and now suddenly we were living in a completely different age where now they're talking about teleportation. So I had to teach myself this. I had to adapt. I had to learn how to live with human beings again, and not animals, because that's what I was used to living with. But in all of this, the only thing that my foundation was my faith. Not just mine, but also my mother and my father's faith, like I said. And that resonated with me. It gave me the willpower to survive and to continue. Every day is a new challenge for me. And I look at every day like that. And the last thing before I leave, I just want to tell you guys, there's no weighing scale for trauma and pain. My pain is not greater than your pain. Your pain at any given moment is yours. And for any reason, and I've found this, I have lived this, and I beg young people, it's so nice to see so many of you here today, but I beg you, if there is a situation in your life, there is a trauma in your life that is lingering, that you find difficult, this obstacle is difficult for you to overcome, there are wonderful people, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. You're never alone in all this. I have never been alone. The person that you see today is a person that has been helped by his family, by his friends, by every single... People have shown me a humanity that I had seen die inside my captors. When I used to see their treatment, I believed all human beings could be like this. You know, they would have this cruelty inside them. But only when I've come back and I've seen my friends and my family and the people that I love help me heal, do I always tell young people this. There are wonderful people there. Always, always, always. First, go get professional help. You must. Never think that you're alone, and never think that you can tackle a problem that's beyond you by yourself. So I leave you with that, and thank you so much for having me. God bless you all.